and say welcome to this webinar that we're doing today with a very special guest, Dr. Rob Vanbergen. This is all about taking advantage of our energetic selves. We have energy in our body, and we can harness and use that energy to help create healing. So I'm super excited to have our guest today, Dr. Rob Vanbergen. So Dr. Rob has a bachelor's degree in holistic health sciences, a doctor in natural medicine, and a PhD in microcurrent vagus nerve stimulation. He is probably one of the top people in the world who knows about microcurrent and vagus nerve stimulation for releasing pain. He had his own experience with releasing, his own health problems with anxiety and scoliosis as a child, which actually got reversed with microcurrent. And also his own son, James, who's autistic. Microcurrent has been helpful for him too, to create more peace and calm. So I'm super excited to welcome Rob and all of these people from New Zealand, Ontario. Welcome, Kate, Jennifer, Barbara, Penny, Jennifer, Annette from Sweden. Cam or Sam from Turkey. Wow. Welcome, everyone. And Rob, I'd like to welcome you as well. So I'm going to, if you're ready, Rob, I'm going to pin you. I think this will work.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, remove. All right, so welcome, Rob, and I'm going to let you take it away and just say a big thank you from my heart to for you being here today, and just this opportunity for people in my community to learn about microcurrent from one of the best people in the world. It's amazing. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited. I love presenting to people that are inquiring minds. And as you've noted, it comes from all over, right? There's not a geographical restriction to people that are interested in learning about how to better their health. So, if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen and jump into this presentation that I've prepared for everyone.
And I'll just mention before we start that we are going to have your presentation's about an hour, and we're going to have a Q&A at the end. So stay tuned till the end with your questions. If you do have questions as we're going along, pop them in the Q&A and we'll get to them at the end.
Yes, absolutely. There's going to be plenty of time for questions, so I will try my best not to get too distracted while presenting. I tend to get carried away. And so I will try and streamline this as best as I possibly can. So, all right. So welcome everyone. I think Jane's already said it. I'm so thrilled to have so many people here today that are excited to learn about what it is that microcurrent therapy can do for your body. And we talk about this in the context of pain management and pain resolution. But it does go beyond that, and we actually look to microcurrent therapy as something that can, in the end, fundamentally balance even chronic disease. And this comes back to what we're going to be talking about in the early stages of this presentation, which is largely the root of pretty much every disease that there is out there. So, without further ado, let's get started here. So, the beginning of this presentation may be a recap of things that people here, inquiring minds, already know about. We're going to be talking about the systems and techniques that already exist out there in the mainstream, largely involving medications, surgeries, and things like that, and why these things are not ever going to be the thing that resolves the issue for people. We're going to discuss the impact of a damaged fascial system, and we're going to talk about the system that we use and why it will be a game changer for you guys. Now, at the end of the webinar, I will answer as many questions as I physically can. I usually go till I drop, but I think we might have a little bit of a time restriction today. But I'm quick at answering the questions, and I always find it interesting to see the similarities between the questions in every presentation I do, because it's all rooted together in the same way. Now, Jane already introduced me. I'm just going to touch upon it just a little bit more. I don't want to linger on this too much, but I am Dr. Rob Vanbergen. I am a doctor of natural medicine and a doctor of humanitarian services, and I have my PhD in natural medicine as well, focusing on that microcurrent piece. It's going to be a big part of what we talk about today, vagus nerve stimulation to resolve inflammation in the body. Now, beyond this, I am a chronic pain survivor, if you will call it that. From a very young age, I did suffer from scoliosis. And in fact, I did a podcast episode with Jane, and I kind of dived into that already. So if you're looking for more about that, rather than recap it here, I'd encourage you to check that out there as well. But suffice it to say that natural medicine and microcurrent therapy are a natural marriage because microcurrent therapy, as you will discover, is a system that is purely natural, despite the fact that it is encouraged by an artificial machine that we have created. It actually is what runs your body and allows your body to function. And so I like to blend these two things together. We bridge the modern medical science and the holistic energy methods, and we keep that creation going as we do so. So, what is the critical issue here, right? It is what we are taught from when we are young. And almost everyone in the holistic health space has had their own issue at some point, and they have learned something along the way as they do. And one of the things is when we're younger, we are kind of taught by society that there is either no answer or there is a chemical answer to our health concerns. This is what people say when you get sick, when you have an autoimmune disease, when you have anxiety or depression. And this is what we are taught when we're younger, but it's also what our doctors are taught. And we're taught to respect the doctors. So it's this kind of endless cycle of going through the system that is not really designed to help solve our problems. So we begin with this understanding going into young adulthood where we're independent and we're on our own, that if we suffer from chronic pain, illness, or disease, we're going to have to take drugs, we're going to need surgical intervention, or we have no hope for relief. So this is the biggest one probably by far, and this is this idea of a simple pill that will fix whatever ails you, right? But here's the thing, there is no such thing as a pill that can resolve disease. All pills do is allow you to mask the problem and degenerate in peace. My dad, Dr. Hache, got started in this field many years ago, over 40 years ago now. And this is something he's always coined as a term, is this idea of continuing to degenerate cellularly while we don't think anything is wrong until it is too late, until it catches up with us. And pills, pain pills, they kind of push us to this point. So the pill on the good end is that it's going to help lessen the pain and discomfort that you are feeling. But on the bad side of things, they do have innumerable side effects, from shortening your lifespan at the most extreme to just simply making your body not think something is actually wrong, and all the different side effects that come with this depending on the drug. The CDC actually put out some stats on different drugs, and even Tylenol has over 110 side effects, some of which are nervous system damage. Gabapentin, which is often given for nerve pain, actually has a 10% chance of causing permanent nerve damage. So these are not things that we actually see on the little label. These are things that are hidden behind the scenes because they are so minuscule of a chance in scientific minds kind of perspective that they don't have to put them out there, but they do happen and they happen to people all the time. So we have to be really aware that there's always a downside, there's a trade when it comes to the pill. One of the biggest is the impact that it can have on your organ function. This is the thing that kind of gets me the most here, is that even something as simple as Tylenol can cause permanent liver damage, and one ibuprofen can cause inflammation in the stomach lining for up to 2 weeks after taking it. So you can end up with a lot of side effects from compounding these meds over time. Now, this one didn't even used to really be on my radar because I know people used to get spinal surgeries for fusions and things like that. But it was kind of at an extreme when someone had hit this end point where there was nothing more that they could do. And now it's becoming a first line defense against chronic pain. And some people are told this is the only option they have, right? And we hear this more and more and more. Now, whether it's for profit or just an idea of a quick fix, it's becoming an increasingly popular solution for pain. I have one patient who I will never forget who went for a regular checkup with their doctor. and they were told that they had early signs of osteoarthritis and that they should get a hip replacement. This person, this lady, she had no pain, she had no discomfort, she had no restrictions, but they were encouraging her there on the spot to go and replace her hip. And that was a big red flag for me. There's a reason, there's got to be an underlying reason when someone who feels fine is being told to replace a body part of theirs that they've had their entire lives with something artificial. And this will, of course, lead into complications of surgery. I am the kind of naturopath that believes that there is a purpose to modern medicine, conventional medicine, and I do see value in it. Trust me. There are times when you need that pill or when you need that surgery. So, to me, surgery is great for life-threatening situations. When my appendix was going to burst, thank goodness they were ready to remove that out and get rid of it and save me, right? And it's the same with other people, women that are going through childbirth that need a C-section. Thank goodness that is an option because it preserves lives. But it's this type of surgery I'm concerned most about are these issues where people are actually going in and early kind of game, removing body parts and replacing and fusing them. Now, surgery brings with it a very long recovery time. And in the end, it leads you to needing more surgeries down the line. A lot of the time, you're very vulnerable to that, especially with the spinal system. You'll find people that have one spinal fusion, have another, and another, and another, and it just keeps going. Each time creating scar tissue, which brings with it an absolute plethora of health concerns that just really stack up. And then we hear the worst of all, which is that there's nothing we can do. And sometimes this is the first response when I get on the phone with a client and they say, yeah, I've been told there's no helping my condition. And I was told that from the beginning because they don't know what it is. But other times it's built up over time. They've been on the pills, they've tried the surgeries, and although they've maybe gotten better for a while, it catches up and it makes it worse in the end. Regardless of when you hear this come from the doctor's mouth that, well, there's nothing more we can do, it really can defeat everyone in every way. And it can take the wind out from under their wings and they just think, well, I'm actually doomed. And they begin to manifest that themselves. It's that hopelessness, which is potentially worse than any disease because it's this idea that you are beyond fixing. So, what do we like to do? Well, let's not accept any of these things that you have to take these pills or surgeries or anything along those lines to resolve your chronic disease, your illness, or your pain, because we do know that you can do this without drugs, without surgical intervention, and there is almost always something we can do. I have yet to meet a person that's too far gone to improve their life with natural alternatives to these conventional medical tools. So that's the part that many of you probably already knew, right? You are already invested in looking into alternative ways to help your body and to improve your situation. That's why you're here. So we have to ask ourselves the fundamental question of if our body is designed to heal itself, why isn't it healing? Okay. We know from a cellular level that we are not built to fall apart. It doesn't make any sense. If we get cut, we bleed for a bit and we heal. If we break a bone, we get it set and it heals. We get sick, we fight it off and we heal. So the heal is the final stage of the equation. We just get better. This is what we've likely experienced our entire lives, is the ability to recover until we don't. So when something comes up that is not healing, we have to ask ourselves why. Something there is blocking that resolution from occurring. Something is standing in the way of recovery. And we have to figure out what that is. If we figure out what that is, then we can potentially resolve it. Now, the fundamental truth here is that over 80% of all chronic disease, illness, and pain is the result of inflammation. And this is according to the World Health Organization, the CDC. This is very commonly known conventional medicine jargon. To me, all disease is rooted in inflammation. Now, someone is going to say, well, inflammation is good. Inflammation is something that comes in and it helps your immune system to fight off disease. And yes, it's true. In acute situations, inflammation is good. We want inflammation. If I break my wrist, I want that inflammation to go there because it's going to prevent me from using my wrist. It's going to alert me that something is wrong. But if that lingers and doesn't go away, that's when we turn chronic and we have to be very, very concerned because the issue is that the body itself cannot heal in the presence of inflammation. So if we don't get past that acute alert protect stage, we'll never repair. And this becomes this long cycle. So when someone is told by their doctor that they have chronic pain because they've had to wait for this diagnosis 6, 8, 9 months before they're told that that's enough. Okay, you have chronic pain now. That to me is ridiculous because the acute healing stage is a few weeks. We just need a few weeks of that inflammation and we should be on the mend. If we're not, that's where my concern kind of comes in because if we look to inflammation as a body wrecking event and not something that is helping us as it does in its acute stage, we see this system that sticks around, blocks electrical communication, causes us pain and discomfort. And then we're starting to see the early answer to the question of what is causing us to not heal. This is compounded by the drug issue that we talked about before, right? People take medications when they feel pain, and these medications, their goal is to cover up the pain. It mutes the pain signals. It maybe temporarily turns off inflammation, such as an NSAID, but it has long-term effects, alternatively on the body, even creating inflammation in different places. To me, it doesn't matter if it's pharmaceutical, it's marijuana, if it's something you buy on the street from some guy in a trench coat, it is masking the problem, right? It is not helping you fix the problem. All you're doing is you're taking off your sad face and you're putting on a happy mask and you're walking around and going about your day. But again, that degeneration in peace is continuing to burn underneath. The inflammation is staying and it stays for so long because you keep masking it that it does damage. It starts to break down the structure of our body, and then the issue turns into that chronic state, amplified by these medications. So, why aren't we healing? Long story short, that inflammation is preventing us from actually regenerating on a cellular level. We know it is impossible to regenerate if inflammation is present because it's not moving past that acute injury stage. We don't know the inflammation is there when we cover it up either, right? So it just keeps burning and we forget about it. And we trick our body into forgetting about it. Our body is this intensely intricate system that has all of these functions going on passively every waking moment of the day. And it has a lot to think about. And when we take away the signal that it needs to know something's wrong without repairing the problem, all we do is we encourage the body to forget about it and not pay attention as well, causing more damage as that fire continues to burn. I like to say that it's like walking into your bedroom and seeing the bed on fire and just closing the door and walking away, right? It's this kind of silly idea that we treat our property better than we treat our bodies. But I'm willing to bet that if most people walked into their bedroom right now and the bed was on fire, they'd do something about it. They wouldn't just shut the door, walk away, and think, well, that problem will solve itself later, right? So people don't do that to their property, but we do this to our bodies. We shut the door, we ignore it, and we walk away. So I just don't understand that. It's my dad used to say it's kind of like if you're driving down the highway and your check engine light comes on, and you're like, well, it's not causing me any problems right now, and you keep driving, and then you pull on over and you just put a little piece of tape over the check engine light, and now you don't have to worry about it anymore, right? There's so many ways to describe this, but again, it's a property versus our body, right? And how we value that. So, the obvious answer is that we want to take out that inflammation. If we take out inflammation, then the root of that disease, it cannot progress any further. Now, there are other things in the body that create disease, toxins and things like that, right? Toxic exposure, mold. But these things also create that inflammation. And if you can turn that inflammation off, you stop that base level trigger from being able to fire and worsen the disease. So, shutting down the inflammation cuts power to the disease. And this is what we can do with microcurrent therapy. Okay, so the most common response when people hear about microcurrent therapy is, okay, so it must be like a TENS device or something, right? Or maybe a PEMF mat. Those have become very popular in the last few years. But no, it's neither of those things. And on the next slides, I will discuss the differences between these things and describe what microcurrent is and why it is different. So a TENS device is very common. You can buy them in the drugstore. You probably see them. We have one in Canada called Dr. Ho. It's on all the late night TV infomercials. And they're like $50 machines that use electricity to paralyze the pain receptors in your body. So the goal is to block pain signals and mask your pain. To me, that's just like taking a Tylenol, but in electric form. Now, how does a TENS differ on a fundamental level from a microcurrent device? It uses extremely high levels of electricity to actually block these pain receptors. You got to think, how much electricity does it take to stop a nerve sending signals? That's what it needs. It's actually 1,000 times more electricity in the lowest level TENS mode on average than in our highest mode in our devices. So 1,000 times. It even has a different name, microamps versus milliamps in that case, right? So there are contraindications with TENS. Our body has an electrical capacity to it. Our heart runs on electricity. TENS devices can alter and mess with that because they use such intense electricity that the body is not used to. We call it body unfriendly electricity. And these contraindications in the use of the TENS device can be things like don't treat over your heart, don't use it on your face, don't pass it over the neck. You kind of end up looking at it out of the box and you think, what am I even supposed to do with this? Because all the warnings essentially tell you not to use it. So that is a TENS device. What about PEMS? Now, pulsed electromagnetic fields are actually beneficial in a lot of ways, and these are frequency generated waveforms that are projected from a device in the form of an electromagnetic field. PEMFs do have health benefits. We use them, a lot of people use them. And if you don't understand anything about electromagnetic fields, everyone is probably watching this right now on a phone, a laptop, something, right? You're maybe an iPad. Any electronic device emits an electromagnetic field. It's subtle. We don't always feel it unless we're extremely sick, but there is some sort of energy field coming off of that. It's like the byproduct. A pulsed electromagnetic field attempts to harness extremely low level healthy frequencies and have a conversation with the body's cells and get them to resolve these things. It's really just harnessing the natural electromagnetic field, but doing so in a healthy way. Now, PEMFs take a frequency and they saturate an area with it. They kind of hit typically the entire body at once, and these frequencies just are. They aren't live, they're not moving throughout the nerves, conducting through the fascia. They just cover an area. And essentially, by flooding it in frequency, they hope that the right cells take the hint and work in the way they need to. Now, microcurrent is a bit different. So, the first thing I think everyone needs to know about microcurrent is that it is already present in their bodies. Whether you have ever used a microcurrent machine or not, if you are a living human being, you have a microcurrent system. Our body and every one of the trillions of cells within it functions on electrical energy, and signals are sent throughout the body, resolving and triggering the pain response, initiating healing, contracting muscles, and it is lightning fast. When you're about to step out into the street and you see a car coming in from the corner of your eye and you jump back, that is your nervous system has just been hit with all these signals telling you what to do, and you didn't even have to think about it. It just happened. This is the natural body process. Now, if we jump back to the fact that our human bodies were designed to heal fundamentally because they have that capability, we realize that there is something in there that turns on the inflammation and turns it off. And this is what microcurrent can do because the brain uses its own microcurrents through the nerves, through the fascia, to send these signals and to receive them from your body. Now, the brain has ultimate power. It can control pretty much everything going on in our body. If I need my brain, if this is where meditation can come into play, right? If you can get really good at meditation, you can control a lot of things because your brain can actually activate these functions. Now, this is not for everyone, right? You can't just have that level of control without years of concentration. And in doing that, how do you get there if you're in chronic pain, if you're in chronic disease states? Well, microcurrent as a technology works as a way to simply take control of this system. So microcurrent has a lot of different benefits. It will actually stimulate the body's natural functions, providing electrons to free radicals and neutralizing them before they can create and feed disease. And it can also enhance circulation in the body by up to 480%. So it's providing a very healthy environment for healing. And then you add in the frequency component and you start being able to talk to the body in its own language, sending anti-inflammatory signals through the skin into the site, and it just feels like a small tickle on the skin. As the current enters the body registers these frequencies and it thinks it's its own. The brain is thinking it has sent that signal. And the body and then initiates the natural healing protocols and it shuts down inflammation, it triggers regeneration, and it improves body function. So if you think about microcurrent technology as a remote control for your body's nervous system, then you're kind of on the right path to thinking of what you could do with that level of control. Now, we mentioned earlier the idea of just flipping the switch on inflammation, taking that away, and being able to resolve the issues. And this is, on essence, what microcurrent will enable us to do. We can send the correct frequencies into the body, and these are the same frequencies the body itself uses to communicate and shut inflammation down. So, microcurrent converses with the brain. We've already kind of touched upon this, but how does it do it? Well, the frequencies enter the skin through the microcurrent device. And again, this feels like a little tickle on the skin. It's not painful. And these frequencies then trigger a response from the brain. The brain then acknowledges the problem, and together we can have a conversation. We can use the words of the frequencies to direct the body to deal with inflammation, to repair bone, to repair tendons, to relax muscles. It can do that cohesively together. So I'm going to explore the technology and the different functionalities that we can do. And today we're talking about our newest device, our entry-level machine, that has really a vast array of possibilities. So first, I want to start with my absolute favorite topic, which is vagus nerve stimulation. To me, this is possibly the most important revelation of modern medicine. And this is the involvement of the vagus nerve and its ability to shut down inflammation body-wide. And you see here at the cover of Scientific American, this was in 2015. And you look at that title there, as provocative as it is, Electric Cures. Bioelectronic medicine could create an off switch for arthritis, diabetes, and even cancer. Now, when this came out, I was not working in this field, but my parents were. And watching my dad read this magazine cover to cover 3 or 4 times just because of this, as he saw it walking around the grocery store, jumping out at him and realizing what this meant for microcurrent technology, this truly changed the trajectory of what we did and how we approached conditions. Before this, we would look at every disease individually and we would say, hey, we got to have to treat this spot right down to the centimeter or the inch of the area where the problem is. Now we suddenly have this option to work on one spot to resolve everything really throughout the body. So vagus nerve stimulation helps with autoimmune disorders. It helps with complex regional pain syndrome, fibromyalgia, all inflammatory conditions and diseases. And if you recall, I already said that that's pretty much all conditions and diseases. So this was kind of an eye opener when we saw this cover. And for them to put something like this could fix even cancer was huge because that is a big no-no word in the in the health field to be able to say fix or cure. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the nerve itself. So I've got a nice image on the screen for those of you that can see that of the vagus nerve. And you can see that it touches everything in the body. Vagus nerve actually translates to the wandering nerve for that reason, because it just goes through all of the vital organs and it connects each and every one of them to the brain. This nerve sends and receives tons of signals each and every day, and the vagus nerve is responsible for digestion, for heart rate, for certain reflex actions like coughing, sneezing, swallowing, vomiting, things we just do when we need to do them. But until they did this research study way back, like let's say 10 years ago now, we did not know. What scientists did not know was that stimulating the vagus nerve actually blocked the production of inflammatory factors within the body. A total fluke accident when they were injecting medications into mice and they hit one in the vagus nerve and they suddenly realized that its pain was completely blocked. They've repeated this and they started to do human trials on this as well. Now, with this in mind, the idea of being able to block the creation of these tumor necrosing factors, which will kind of feed inflammation, we knew we were onto something in this field as well. Now, this nerve also helps regulate our fight or flight response. Anyone suffering from any disease or pain knows that they are in a state of discomfort and fear a lot of the time. The fear of when will that pain come back, the stress of having to go to the store and worrying that it's going to worsen your pain or worsen your condition. This is part of that fight or flight response. And unfortunately, just as you can't heal in the presence of inflammation, you can't really heal in a fight or flight mode. It's a survival mode designed to help you survive some sort of horrible situation. And yet, here we are trying on the day to day to survive something that we cannot escape from. This can trigger this, and you need to work on that piece. But the vagus nerve allows us to do that too. Now, what did they do with this wonderful research that they created? Well, they made it an implantable medical device. They charged $20,000 to $30,000 a pop, and you got to replace it every 5 years. This was the conventional medical pharmaceutical world solution to dealing with this awesome discovery. Now, this despite the fact that when they discovered this, they were just tapping the vagus nerve with an electric pen. They didn't need to do surgical implants to get the results. This is just the way they went about it. Now, we're going to talk about scar tissue in a little bit here, but the scar tissue is created by the surgery as well, which further compounds the problems. Our way to do vagus nerve is the original way. It's the way of simply accessing the vagus nerve where it comes across the surface of your neck on the side there, just placing a probe right on the skin, no water, no sticky gels, no nothing, just placing the metal electrode there and stimulating for 3 minutes. That's all it takes. 3 minutes, 3 times a day, and you can train your vagus nerve to change its tone and actually spend more time in your rest, digest, relax state and remove that inflammation from the body. And this, as I said, changed the game. Now, at the time, we could only do this with our devices designed for doctors, which cost so much money that we just simply couldn't get this out to the masses. So a lot of what we've done over the past 5 years is create these home-based devices that can bring this single treatment, as well as more, to the masses. So, what about neurofeedback? So, neurofeedback is kind of a byproduct of what we did when we created this device. We've been able to create a way of placing alpha waveforms in the brain. Now, the brain operates on alpha, beta, delta, theta, gamma waves, and all of these have different benefits and negatives, right? Beta is kind of where we spend our fight or flight time, delta in deep sleep. Alpha is where we relax. Alpha is our when you finally exhale and you feel calm at the end of the day, when you're just relaxing, when you're healing. Alpha is when you sleep, when you're heading into a sleep mode, or when you're just not feeling that stress. So we have this program designed for vagus nerve that triggers an alpha state. So we could then utilize this same program to actually kind of overwrite the brain's brain waves through putting a signal in. And we do this through these little ear clips here, which I'll show you on the screen in a bit. But this allows you to place them on your ears and create a circuit. So anything electrical, you want a positive and a negative circuit. And this current travels between that circuit. So by using the ears, we get the current to travel across the brain, and the brain waves are kind of overwritten by this gentle tingling you feel only here in your ears but that pushes your brain to operate in an alpha state and calms down. Now, this enhances your ability to sleep. This can help with anxiety and it enhances healing. Why? Because again, you can't heal in a super stressed state. So you need to pull yourself into that alpha state. So our alpha neurofeedback here keeps us out of fight or flight mode. It reduces body stress. It enables repair within the body. We know that if we are in alpha states, we are safe. Through the application of conductive ear clips, we can use the devices to keep ourselves in this state. And the innumerable health benefits mean that we can really spend as much time as we want in this alpha state. Now, neurofeedback versus vagus nerve, this is a little bit more of a temporary fix. While I am wearing the ear clips, I am going to be changing my brainwaves. But as soon as I take them off, the brain will take back over. With the vagus nerve, we're changing the vagal tone. It's like training a puppy, right? And we're training that puppy to go potty outside, not inside. And we can't do that with the neurofeedback, but we can use it for those acute stages of stress. And it's a passive treatment. So it's really easy to do. What about, so as far as enhancing sleep as well, just to go back to that last one, it's kind of a double whammy treatment because you want to be, if you're having a hard time falling asleep, it's because your brain is running. It's going through the beta state. It's talking about your worries. You're concentrating on other things. If you go into that alpha state, then you're getting calm, you're relaxed, and you're getting ready to go to sleep. So it can help people that have insomnia as well, all in that one single treatment. So no matter which autoimmune disease you have, because they're all kind of the same, and I hate saying that because people can sometimes become very attached to their conditions, but autoimmune diseases are all rooted in an inappropriate inflammatory response. The inflammation is what is triggering your immune system to attack the area in question. And that causes more inflammation, and that gets you stuck in this cycle where you just continue to go downhill. But it doesn't really matter what the autoimmune disease is. Because if it's rheumatoid arthritis and it's attacking your joints, if it's Hashimoto's, it's attacking the thyroid, Crohn's, the gut, they're all just different locations of your immune system is attacking your body. Now, if you cut power to the inflammation, you stop that inflammation cycle, you break the cycle, and the immune system has no reason to attack you. Does it actually resolve the inappropriate immune response? Not necessarily. But in a way, by breaking that cycle, it resolves the autoimmune disease. Now, people often ask, and I'm sure this will be a question in the Q&A, but I'll address it now. The question is this a permanent thing? Do I have to use microcurrent for the rest of my life? Like, it's like being on a medication where it's just take dose after dose after dose. And the answer to that is no. Like, this is about correcting your body electric, making your body function the way it should function. And when you do treatments, you are really, for the most part, building up a repaired body electric that knows how to function. And then the device becomes a tool for when you hurt yourself, or when you bump your head, or when you get when you get bronchitis, or when you get something that is an acute situation. And you're no longer the goal of this, of creating this equipment, was not to replace your disease with a therapy. It was to eliminate your disease with the therapy, and then you've got this bonus therapy you can use as you need it. So, as simple as I try to boil all this down with autoimmune disease, if you flip the switch, you turn off the autoimmune disease. And we've seen this countless times as well. Now, scar tissue, I always question putting this a little bit earlier in the presentation, but I'm a vagus nerve fanatic, so I obsess about that instead. But scar tissue is so important that it is actually known as rule number one of microcurrent. Why is this the case? Scar tissue creates a communication blockage, and that causes pain, inflammation, and it impairs the healing process. Your cells attempt to communicate electrically, but they can't do this through scar tissue. So the signals have to find another path. Treatment of scar tissue with the correct microcurrent frequencies will actually work to flatten and remove the scar, but it also neutralizes the electrical barrier, allowing the cells to function optimally. Due to the nature of the devices, we can reach deep scar tissue, the result of laparoscopic surgeries and big surgeries. But treating scar tissue is rule number one on microcurrent for this reason, because if an electrical blockage in your tissue is what's causing your disease, then a 3-minute treatment is enough to clear that pathway and allow the current to stop passing through it again. That could be 50, 60% of the problem. If we don't clear scars, our therapy will not be as effective because we won't be able to direct it to those areas. Now, you can see visible differences in scar tissue even after one short treatment. The bands that cause the tightened tissue start to break up and are smooth. This guy here, just as an example, was a cameraman that was filming my dad and on one of the training courses we were doing. And we were looking for a volunteer, someone that had a scar. And this guy just happened to have this big, gnarly scar on his back from he got it caught on a metal pipe. And as he pulled away, it just sliced down his back. So this was big. It had been bothering him for a long time. And by just doing that one treatment, you can see the bands are kind of softening up. And this is because I don't remember if I explained this later in the presentation, so I'll explain it now. This is because the fascia of the body relies on water. You need the water-bound collagen within the tissue to conduct the electricity. Scar tissue is dry, like dusty concrete, right? And we need to be able to allow that water back in. Without water in the collagen, the current can't pass through it, which means the signals don't get through. So if you've had like a cesarean section, a C-section, you have cut off like most of the bottom of the body on the front's ability to communicate with the brain. So people can start to develop these issues. The signals have to get around in different ways. They're delayed, they're slowed. Maybe they don't even go in because these scars will even absorb the electricity, kind of like soaking them up like a sponge. And we're until we release that and realign the collagen, allowing it to let water from the body back in, that communication will not be restored. The good news is it's a very simple process. Once we've done this, we do turn to inflammation. So the scar tissue being out of the way, being your first few days of treatment, just to make sure you clear every scar because scars are everywhere. Whether you've had surgeries or not, you have scar tissue. Everyone has a belly button. People have pierced ears. They have pierced other body parts, tattoos, and scars don't have to be cuts. If you have whiplash, if you ever sprained something, if you've broken a bone, there's always going to be scar tissue there. The body responds, it says, this is a problem, and it pours concrete in the hole. And then it says, problem solved, and walks away. We need to correct that if we want to open up those pathways. So, from someone looking at doing this therapy, think about scars, think about injuries over your lifetime, what has happened beyond just surgeries. And remember, if you've lived in a bubble and you've been protected since the day you were born, you still have a belly button. So you want to treat that. It's our first scar. So anyway, once we've moved past scar tissue, we can turn to inflammation, knowing that the signals are going to get through. The second rule of inflammation of microcurrent, therefore, is to treat inflammation. Inflammation is the root of all disease, and local treatments can reduce or eliminate inflammation in as little as one session. A local treatment would be, say, hey, Rob's wrist hurts. So Rob's going to treat his wrist. Okay. That's a local treatment. You can remove the inflammation there. So a systemic treatment would be Rob's stomach hurts or his entire body aches. And so vagus nerve stimulation will treat my whole body. The local treatments can provide relief. They can remove that inflammation wherever the issue is, and it can loosen you up and loosen up your muscles. Now, in reducing inflammation, the symptoms of disease can begin to subside. So imagine rheumatoid arthritis where you get the deformed joints from the inflammation. If you start to work on those joints and you get rid of that inflammation, you can start to see improved function in the area. And so local inflammatory treatments or systemic are going to be rule number two. Then we look to regenerate. And this is the thing everyone wants. We want to repair, right? It's one thing to say, again, use rheumatoid arthritis as an example because I'm so intimately familiar with it, is let's say you have all these deformed joints from rheumatoid arthritis, and then you remove the inflammation. You're no longer in pain, but you still have these deformed, twisted, damaged joints. Well, what do we do from here, right? Now we want to be able to repair them. Certain signals, certain frequencies, these will encourage repair. So in the presence of things like infection, Disease, chronic inflammation, the body will break down. It doesn't really matter what it is. That's just what happens because it's unable to repair. Microcurrent knocks that inflammation out, and it also has the capability to repair damaged tissue fast. And I'm going to show some before and afters of wounds and injuries that have been healed with microcurrent therapy very quickly. Whether the most severe wound, the smallest cut, we can remove the pain, but we can also reverse the damage done. Now, regeneration is the long pole in the tent, as they say. This is the part that takes the longest to set up. We have to get all of the other factors dealt with first, the scar tissue, the inflammation, and regeneration can take the longest. While inflammation can be turned off in the snap of a finger, regeneration takes a little bit more time. And this is where some daily 5 to 10 minutes of treatment can really start to encourage your body to do that repair. Now, for those of you into acupuncture, you can stimulate meridians. And in fact, many acupuncturists choose to do electroacupuncture instead of direct needle only acupuncture, where they'll put the needles in your body and they'll clip the device to it and run current through the metal needles. Now, you can also do this with a non-needle based pen probe that allows you to just put pressure on the points. And so meridian stimulation is really about correcting your body. Whether you believe in meridians or not, we know scientifically meridians and fascia are one and the same. They exist within these communication pathways. The way we view meridians is that the organs and meridians are the crux of this overarching energy system. And the organs function optimally only when the wires that connect them to the power sources are working with just the right amount of energy. This is the thing, it's all about balance. The wires are what we now understand to be the fascia of our bodies. And many acupuncturists will agree with this as well. My dad, 30 years ago, got kicked out of a symposium for suggesting such things. And now it's kind of more commonly known practice. Now, without a functioning fascial system, our body's systems start to fail. So, what do we do with meridians? Well, they're not required to get results. We use them in certain chronic conditions, certain points, and we show you exactly where to put them. And really, anytime you're putting pressure and moving over the body, you can imagine you're not going to be able to avoid these meridians. I think it's very interesting as you start to delve into what your condition is and start to look at your symptoms. You'll often find if you look at a meridian dummy, and then you look at your body, you're going to see that your highest points of pain tend to be on key meridian points. People that have issues breathing can also, from asthma, can also find heavy pain on their upper arm just by brushing over it. And it's a sensitivity of these meridians. So if we know the symptoms, we can suggest meridian treatments, and brief stimulation with one of the device's programs can balance out the energy and start to resolve that issue as well. So fascial realignment and repair is all connected to this. And fascia is kind of gross looking, as you can see there. This system supports, protects, evolves, and connects the entire human body. There are solid and liquid fascias that are interlinked without interruption between the different components. And one of the main components of fascia is collagen, which is made up of these water-bound fibers. And this is one of the main things that gives fascia its conductivity. Remember, I mentioned this earlier with scar tissue. Water is conductive. We know not to step in a lake that has a power line laying in it, right? Fascia allows our body to carry the microcurrent through it, transforming it from what could be a localized treatment only, where we only work on the shoulder, to a treatment where working on the shoulder allows the current to pass down the arm, or working on the kind of pelvic area can improve circulation to the feet, right? There are ways we can use the fascia and utilize this network to encourage and improve the therapy across the board. So one part of this is to neutralize scar tissue, and then the other is to eliminate inflammation. And just by doing that, you reconnect the fascia, and the body's microcurrent systems are improved. You can physically realign the body as well. Like so many musculoskeletal pains come from poor alignment, certain microcurrent programs allow you to involuntarily adjust your muscles. You'll see one treatment like Little Wings allows you to treat your neck and it will pull your shoulder up and essentially realign your spine and shoulders. It can be a little bit of an aggressive therapy and a lot of people don't like it, but in 3 minutes, you can do essentially an adjustment. The same thing can be realignment. If you look in the mirror and you notice that one shoulder is much higher than the other, a brief 3 minute treatment, and you'll notice that you will correct that simply by treating the opposite hip to the shoulder that's higher. So you can really do a lot when it comes to this sort of thing. And a lot of this comes down to the idea of the onboard pharmacy. Communication with the brain can be essential to overcoming pain and disease. And the Genesis 2 has that onboard pharmacy kind of connection. This is what we talk about as biofeedback. This is when using the current in the device in certain modes can actually receive a signal from the brain, and the device can let you know that you've sent a signal and you've received one back. And the brain has this capacity to fix so many things that simply by sending the signal, sometimes your brain is like, hey, I didn't realize there was a problem with Rob's hand. And so the issue begins to correct itself because we've drawn its attention to it. You can even recharge your mitochondria here. ATP is our cellular energy. This stands for adenosine triphosphate. And when fully charged, our cells can optimally communicate, preventing breakdown and improving overall health. This protocol can be done daily, and it will benefit everyone because you really find that you need that cellular energy for cells to function. This is a 30-minute passive treatment wearing a pair of gloves and socks that are threaded with silver, and you just sit there and you read a book, you watch TV, you eat your breakfast, and the treatment happens. You improve the body's ability to communicate with the brain. You improve energy and you reduce fatigue. You improve muscle weakness and you improve every other treatment with the device because by adding that more voltage to the cells, you are essentially allowing the cells to communicate better. We can go further as well. We can look to trigger points. This is something that pain management doctors do. It's this idea that, well, your hand hurts, but it's not coming from your hand. It's coming from your arm. And we actually provide all of these trigger point charts to make sure that people have the option to get in and look at these. Now, often this is not necessary because of the fascia, so you're automatically connected. But when you get some stubborn things, it's nice to know that we can visually look and say, well, hey, this black X is where the pain is actually coming from, even though I'm feeling it in these other red spots. Okay, so I want to get into some before and afters, and I always give a little warning. These are mildly kind of gross, depending on the wound. I very carefully curate the ones I show on presentations because we've had some very bad ones from diabetic foot ulcers where you can look through the bottom of the foot and see out the top. That's not the sort of thing I'm going to be showing you here today. But microcurrent being useful for so many things, but one of those that we recently got our FDA approval for is the repair of wounds and injuries. And the thing that I never really realized, because my father did his PhD on wound healing, and I could never see why. I mean, systemically, yeah, it's great that it fixes the wounds, but I didn't see what it helped us to further the message with. But he had said, and it's very true, that wounds are injuries that happen before our eyes. If I burn myself or I cut myself, we see them. And so when we see that healing, we very viscerally see the healing as well. Internal injuries, we don't necessarily see that. The person feels better, but we don't get to see the before and after. With wounds, the regeneration happens before your eyes. So there's some incredible before and after cases here, and I will get through these as we go. Now, this one is one of the older ones. Now, this date thing, I always try and clarify this. This was done in Europe and same in Canada here, right? We do day, month, year. This can be confusing because they do month, day, year in the States. So this is the 24th of October in 2005. So if you're looking for the dates there. So this guy here was working with an electric arc welder when it exploded in his hand, and he got burns over 20% of his body. Now, the burns themselves resolving are one thing, but if you see just how swollen the guy's face is here, right? So treatment started on the second day, and 4 days later, the swelling has started to go down. The burns have started to essentially recede. And then an additional 10 days later, the guy doesn't even look like the same person. Now, burns like this, the recovery time is usually extremely long in hospital with debriding, and there would be considerable scarring as well. Now you can see the hand along the same lines, but he was obviously holding this, so it took a little bit longer to get those same results. This guy here, he got frostbite on his toes. He's infamous now as a search and rescue technician in town. He was doing a training exercise, and I do not believe he passed the training exercise from this. He didn't take off his socks. They were up in the northern areas of Labrador, and essentially he got frostbite on his toes. So he came in for treatment on Friday. The base medic here uses our devices. So when he saw it, he was like, you need to go and see Dr. Hache and Dr. Rob. And he came in with this frostbite on his toes. And he had been told by the base doctor that they were going to amputate his toes on Monday because it was spreading and it wasn't getting any better. So he had 4 days. So we just kind of threw everything at him. We sent him home with a device. And 4 days later, he came back, and you can see that the pink has been restored, the blood flow has been restored, and he did get to keep his toes, though I do think he did not get to keep his job. So yeah, but you gotta be careful about the training exercises here and what you do in the military. All right, so. Daily treatment for 2.5 weeks on a non-healing wound. This was sustained in a nursing home fall. And tragically, we see nursing home injuries a lot. Bed sores, pressure sores, ulcers. Now, this was during COVID, and this lady's son was unable to visit her during COVID. So this was 2.5 weeks of untreated injury that just got worse and worse and worse. So essentially, when he finally went to visit her, he left her with his equipment and got her to just do the daily treatment. This is how easy it is. Someone that hasn't even used it before can just use this device. And we are able to see, yes, the wound closed, but see how red and swollen the entire leg is, whether that's due to infection or massive amounts of inflammation. We see that considerable improvement there in that one. This one was this guy, this is a really old testimonial, essentially. This guy is a rancher, and he was thrown from a horse that bucked him off, and then the horse stomped on his head and fractured his skull. And so they actually took the skin out of his arm to repair his skull. And so they did a skin graft. And so he came home and he didn't even contact us about this. We didn't have online training at the time. He just grabbed his device and he stuck it on the open wound, which we do not recommend. We have protocols for these things that don't involve causing yourself more discomfort by sticking them in your body. But you can start to see like the healing as the tissue starts to come up through the mesh. And so it's still an incredible one to show. And I really need to reverse these because these are backwards. But you can see the tissue starting to repair itself as it goes and filling itself in, all in a matter of about a week. Paul here, avid user of the devices, but didn't really know what he was doing. He was hit by a car in a hit and run while he was riding his bike, and just left in the ditch. And so he went home, and you can see how swollen up he was. He went home after going to the hospital, and in about 4 days, I believe the first newspaper was July 1st. I wish that I could zoom in on these. And the second one was July 4th. He essentially was able to reduce all of that swelling and repair his eye and the bruising. And you'll find that the bruising process accelerates, the body starts to repair because it's bringing in more blood flow. And the blood flow brings in oxygen and it clears it out. And the inflammation being reduced allows the repair to occur. This is a pretty gnarly one as well. This is another nursing home fall, unfortunately, and just scrape and bruising. And again, just daily use of the device to start to accelerate something that before wasn't healing at all. For those with less wound-based issues, this is complex regional pain syndrome. If you don't have it, you probably don't know what it is. If you do have it, you definitely know what it is. This condition is rated as the most painful condition in the world. Actually, consistent pain, more so than if you cut off your finger, like without anesthetic, and feeling that pain all the time. And this often results in this very common symptom of a very bright red and swollen limb. Typically, this condition comes from a failed surgery or successful surgery that obviously failed in this way, or an injury. And it seems to be that the brain and the nervous system play repeatedly on loop this horrible moment of pain. And whether that's the incision of the surgery or whatever it is, it just, the nervous system itself can't calm down. So treatment with vagus nerve stimulation over time to calm the nervous system down is what resolves this condition. We've resolved many cases of complex regional pain syndrome, but you don't often get many before and afters. This guy's been in remission for years, and very thrilled just from that home use vagus nerve. Okay, so now we've talked about the before and afters. We're going to talk about how you learn how to use this equipment because what we used to do is say, would you like to buy one of these devices? Sure. Okay, here you go. Have fun. Here's a book. And now we have a lot more resources to make sure people know how to use them. We don't leave you alone. We give you all of the support you need. Now, typically, this support is paid. On this webinar, this support is free. And we actually are offering premium access to the membership, which is a pretty expensive bundle at no cost. Now, this gives you access to training videos. You get access to a video library with over 400 videos in it that is growing all the time. You go into that library, whether you use the app on your phone or you log in on the internet, and you just type in fibromyalgia, Parkinson's, high blood pressure, and up pops video that you can watch. They'll tell you how to use your device. You get treatment coordinator support, which we'll cover in a minute, access to our VIP Facebook group, should you need it, exclusive offers and Q&A access, as well as much more. Now, as I mentioned, the video library is for your do-it-yourself people. You do also get a manual, by the way, just in case you are a book person. The video library is for your do-it-yourself type of people. You want to go in and you want to find it, or it's late at night and you can't access your treatment coordinator. Well, go in, look up the video, watch it, 5 to 10 minutes. You're going to know how to treat it with your device. The treatment coordinator support is probably our absolute best feature that we offer, the thing that we came up with on a whim, and it has worked out to be the most popular thing with our devices. If you work better with a person, everyone that purchases a device will get access to their own treatment coordinator with this membership. You'll have access to them. It will always be them unless they quit. I can always say fingers crossed because none of them have ever quit yet. But you'll get access to them, so they will get to know you, they'll get to know your family, and they will build you personalized treatment plans and answer all of your questions with the device. This is by email, it is by Zoom, it is by phone, it is whatever kind of support you find you need. They are trained in our protocols, they work directly under me, and if they can't solve your problem, I hear about it, and I'm the one that ends up working on that problem as well. Luckily, they've got so much experience between them all because they're all practitioners in their own right that they are well on top of this. Otherwise, I imagine I would have no free time on my hands. So the private Facebook page, an option for those of you who want to utilize it. This is only for people that have a device, and our members there include holistic health practitioners, dietitians, massage therapists, naturopaths, dentists, and beyond. So if you're looking at asking questions and you're willing to ask them on Facebook, you can utilize this group. It's not mandatory at all. I know a lot of people don't like Facebook. I'm kind of there with you. It's just a good tool to reach people and to allow people to connect. So yeah, this is an optional thing. Sometimes that diverse healing community is really great. I often go to answer questions in there and I realize that it's already been answered by 5 different practitioners, some of which have been doing this therapy longer than even I have. Okay, and you also get to ask me in live Q&A events throughout the year. In fact, there's monthly and quarterly Q&A events. There's Q&A events with me. There's Q&A events with treatment coordinators. There are always avenues to go and get these public questions answered. Now, that being said, you also, with the treatment coordinator support, are likely going to be getting that covered anyway. But just so there's lots of different avenues, we like to do these Q&As. Now, this equipment that we're talking about is, I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, it is regulated. It is a medical equipment, right? It's in the conventional medical space, and it is approved all over the world. I saw we have people from pretty much everywhere, every corner, and every continent. So we have our clearances by the FDA, Health Canada, Europe, we have, which is CE. We have TGA approval for New Zealand and Australia. I know New Zealand doesn't, it has its own, I think it's MedSafe or Medscape, but they tend to accept the TGA, and we're working on getting the MedSafe. But I've been sending to New Zealand for 10 years and I've never had a package get rejected. So we do ship these all over the place. The reason I like to distinguish these different things is because they're approved for different things. What I have talked about today may not necessarily be an approved treatment in America, for example. But it is something that you can do as an off-label treatment. It doesn't mean you have any less functionality. For example, the FDA only clears the devices for the treatment of chronic and intractable pain and wound healing. Health Canada does that as well as certain levels of in circulation enhancement. And then Europe, pretty much everything that I talked about today, same with TGA, is covered under that. Now, does that mean that if you're in America, you get a different device than someone in Europe? No, it is the exact same device. They work on AA batteries. There's no functional differences between them. So you can do the treatments. It's just whether or not the FDA allows us to put on our website that you can do the treatments. That's the kind of the way to approach that. Whoops. All right, so we're not expecting anyone to jump into this blind and just, risk it all. We do have a 30-day guarantee here as well. So anytime within 30 days of receiving the device, you can return the device to us for a refund. There is a restocking fee, and I always like to explain why, because I sometimes think restocking fees seem a little sneaky. The reason is that as a class 2 medical device, if you send your device back to me, I actually have to destroy it because I'm not allowed to resell used medical equipment. It's classified in the same way as the medical equipment would be, like you wouldn't resell a used scalpel, right? So it's been used by a person. Once it leaves our offices, it is registered to you, and we are not allowed to essentially resell it. So this just goes to try and cover some of the costs. Obviously, it doesn't cover all of them. I'm not comfortable asking for more than that. And in fact, in most places, that is the maximum you can ask for anyway for a restocking fee. So that's what it is. But you don't have to worry because our return rate is extremely low. Last year, our 2024 total return rate was 0.001%. People don't return the equipment because they get the results. They start to see changes even within a few days. And the treatment coordinators have kind of ensured that. We used to have closer to like a 1% return rate. But now with treatment coordinators being available and everyone having that one-on-one support, people are getting those results. A lot of the time it was be people saying, oh, I just don't know how to, I'm too frightened to use it because I just don't know what I'm doing. But with the one-on-one guidance, that's no longer an issue. So this is the device. This is the newest device, the Avasia Life Genesis 2. It has 4 programs in it, but those 4 programs scan 180 different frequencies. So you actually have a massive amount of flexibility in this machine. It can work to resolve pain. It will work on most eye conditions. It can do vagus nerve stimulation, sleep and stress reduction. It can stimulate acupuncture points, repair and educate muscles, clear scar tissue, enhance your immune system. Everything we've talked about today is something that this device can do. And it is our most affordable entry-level device as well. So we've come up with, through Jane, a special bundle here for you guys that is essentially only accessible, and this is really important, through this link at the top of the page. And I'm going to have it on the next page too. It's thesanashop.com/BPF, standing for Becoming Pain Free. Now, why is this link important? If you go to our website, thesanashop.com, without this link, you will not find this special bundle. It's hidden behind this link. So you need to click this to get this. This bundle includes, it's our Avasia Life Genesis 2 Deluxe Kit. The cost is $14.95 USD. Why are we charging USD when we're in Canada, you may ask? The devices are actually American made, so we pay USD for them. So it would be impossible for us to balance the consistent daily trading rates on that. So the way to do that is just to charge USD. You get the full deluxe kit. You get all sorts of attachments. They come in this big case here. And essentially, you're going to have a tool for everything that you need. This comes with the Genesis 2 device itself, which, as you can see, is a small handheld device. It fits in your pocket. It runs on two AA batteries. And you also get all of these fancy tools that enable you to do the treatments. Because beyond the electrode on the back, which you could use, you can convert it into this Y probe. So you get extended reach and range. You can convert it into the pencil probe so that you can do acupuncture points, the silver gloves and socks for the mitochondrial recharge, the ear clips, the tongue stimulator, which is actually used to do dental and oral treatments. So you're able to do pretty much everything with these different tools. Now, we're also including that 1 year of the premium membership. Now, this is a $2,000 package for the year. Now, if you choose to continue with a membership after a year, it's not going to charge you $2,000 again. Like, this is a free $2,000 option. There is a lesser membership around $400, or there is the option to re-up this one as well on a monthly or a yearly basis. But with a device like this, you're going to find that within the first few months, you are already probably resolving most of your problems anyway. The dental and oral health lab as well. This is coming up in February, and I've got the date on the next slide. But essentially, this is a crash course daily. It's a 1 day event where we go into dentistry, so cavitations, gum recession, the meridians of the teeth. And we also talk about oral health from ulcers, soft tissue, and what it can do to the brain. So it's a very intensive course focusing on that issue. That will be included free as well. So all said and done, this entire package would be about 4,000 USD, but you get it about 14.95. So less than half off, actually, I think, on there as well. Now, this bundle expires January 16th, 2024, so we're giving you a full week to take advantage of it. And if you go to that link, you will be able to access it. Just to talk a little bit more about this health lab, I've never done these before. This is the first one of the year, and we're doing multiple throughout the year. This usually costs about $400. It's about a 3 hour, 3 to 4 hour training. And essentially, we are going into all of the dental and oral issues as well. So you'll be able to join me there live, ask me questions, and join the rest of the students that will be there too. And it is not just for medical, like people could use this like if they were a practitioner, but everything we do training wise is geared more towards home users. So it's really going to be about self-treatment and things like that too. Okay, so we're hitting our Q&A session, and I don't know if there is a scary amount of questions yet, but I'm going to encourage you to start putting them in the Q&A box, and I will answer as many of the questions as possible. Final reminder as well, well, not final, I'm sure will come up again. This link here I'm circling, this is how you access that special bundle on the website. And again, that'll only be available for a week. So thank you for listening, everyone. And I'm going to see if Jane wants to speak again here for a moment, and we will get through your questions.
Thank you, Rob. That was so informative. And guess what I was doing while you were talking? I had the microcurrent device going and enjoying a little bit of vagus nerve stimulation. There's 11 questions in the Q&A so far, and there's a bunch of questions in the chat. So we'll go to the Q&A questions first. Would you like me to just read them out to you, Rob?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. All right. Let me see. The first one is, how does frequency therapy, FT, differ from pulsed electromagnetic field, PEMF therapy? Do they perform their healing on different principles? Do they do different types of healing? Is one safer than the other? Is there this is more than one question. Is there much research on FT?
Okay, sure. Yeah. So we did kind of cover a little bit of the PEMF difference. So I think that's kind of covered. But yeah, so the frequency therapy, I mean, PEMF uses frequency too. If the PEMF you're using has any kind of grounding to it and it's not just throwing out energy. But the frequencies are always described to me as words, right? So if every single frequency you use is a different word, then you can put together a series of frequencies to have a conversation, right? If I can just say yes, 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 that's one frequency. But if I can say yes, please help me heal this, that's multiple frequencies. PEMF tends to focus a lot on singular frequencies, like say 30 hertz here or 22 hertz. And so really it's just giving you that one word. It's not having that full communication capacity. Now, that being said, a lot of microcurrent frequency therapy tools do the same thing. They use individual frequencies, and those frequencies then have to be changed to have that conversation. Our devices work on what I call algorithmic microcurrent. This means that the frequencies are constantly changing, and in any one program, you might have as much as like 200 frequencies that are changing and having that conversation with the body. So these are done over a series of time. So the different principle is more the saturation of the cells versus the utilization of the nervous system when it comes to our therapy devices. As far as is one safer than the other, it entirely depends. A lot of energy medicine is extremely safe, but then it depends on the machine. You can have our devices have low current, but then you could have a device that claims to be a microcurrent device that actually uses tens level current as well, which is much higher. Same with PEMF. You can have low Gauss, which would be like our devices might emit like a couple of milligauss, or you can have PEMF devices that deliver Gauss levels that are higher than a microwave. So really, it varies based on the equipment. Now, as far as research goes, microcurrent therapy has been being researched for a very long time, and research going back into the 40s, 50s that has continued to kind of grow from there. PEMF is probably more researched, and that's just simply because it also classifies things like bone stimulators. So medical clinics tend to look at PEMF more. And there is, because people don't feel anything with PEMF a lot of the time, there's the consideration, the perception that it might be safer. I don't necessarily believe in that. Microcurrent therapy using frequencies that are body friendly is so safe because your body already has these currents and frequencies in it. You're not putting anything overly foreign into there. So hopefully I kind of covered all of those points.
Okay, perfect. And then next one is I have seen SANA Institute is the pain related certification accepted in the US for
Yeah,
clients,
so
right?
the Santa Institute is our school for people who want to become practitioners. You don't need to take that certification to treat yourself, but it is accepted in the US, it is accepted in Canada, it's accepted in Europe. And essentially, you become a board certified holistic healthcare practitioner and open your own clinic. And we've got several graduates now that have done just that.
Oh, okay, thank you. And next one is what are some grounding items that will help with grounding if you cannot go outdoors, sheets, so on?
Yeah, so first I'll say that you can use this equipment to ground as well. Grounding is trying to absorb like the 783 harmonics, the Schumann resonances from the body. Now, the device itself with those silver threaded gloves and socks can provide grounding inside as well, just by running that 7 to 12 hertz program. But otherwise, there are things like sheets, grounding pads, mats. These can all work to varying degrees. We used to kind of actually sell stuff like that on our site, but we now find that realistically people just do the grounding protocol with the device, and they don't need to utilize those other tools anymore. But they're all kind of equally effective. I think from if I were to choose one thing, I would probably choose sheets because then you're going to expose your body to the grounding more often than anything else if it was a non-microcurrent based thing.
Right, because you're lying on those all night.
Yeah.
Next question is I take tramadol for osteoarthritis and lupus. I usually don't have pain, but woke up with index finger joint on right hand hurting. Have applied several pain creams, but still hurting a lot. Any suggestions? Try
Yeah,
microcurrent.
yeah, I try. I mean, that's the answer, really, right? I think that there are situations where, what we experience with things like arthritis, right? It's just osteoarthritis is inflammation of the joints and it involves the bone as well. Anything ending in itis is inflammation. Unfortunately, what happens as we progress through these conditions is the degeneration that occurs creates its own pain. And then anti-inflammatory pain creams and things aren't going to really touch that anymore because the pain is now from the lack of structure. So this is where we would focus more on regenerative therapy, using the device to rebuild the joints and bones instead of focusing as much on inflammation. It's kind of like this, all pain is inflammation. But is it? Because once the inflammation causes that damage, well, the damaged tissue itself will start to create almost a different kind of pain. It's pretty rare, but it does happen.
Okay, thank you. Next question is about animals. Are there animal protocols using microcurrent? This is
Yeah,
from
there.
an animal naturopath.
Wow, yeah, no, there absolutely are. We have a book on animal healing, and we use the microcurrent devices on animals a lot. One thing is that the Genesis kit here, you'd almost want to get an additional tool as well for animals. We do have a brush electrode, you can see here, that allows you to get through fur. But it's not included in the Genesis 2 kit because I mean, it's a brand new kit, and we don't see this used that often outside of animal therapy. So it might be worth adding this on to the kit if you're looking at dealing with animals too. But we have a video on vagus nerve stimulation on horses. We've done vagus nerve stimulation on cats and dogs using typically the gloves and socks. Well, not the socks, just the gloves, and finding the vagus nerve. And of course, as someone who works with animals, you will know better where their areas are, and you can apply the therapies in different ways. Full meridian charts of cats and dogs and horses too. So we've got lots of options there.
I can say I do have that brush kit that came with mine, and my cat loves it.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's the main way to use it, right? Is on the animals, but yeah.
Sheila said, "Can you stimulate the vagus nerve with exercise?"
Yeah, so there's lots of different ways to stimulate the vagus nerve, right? Deep breathing, gargling, exercising, these can do that. But you don't get that essentially the same kind of guarantee that it's going to be stimulating it in the same way. When you put the current in on the neck, you feel the jiggling, you feel the tingling, you feel it moving through your body. So you're actually actively stimulating it without needing to put in that impact of another activity that triggers that.
Okay. Someone else said, "Have you had any experience of helping a person with MS?"
Yes, so multiple sclerosis, we used to it's kind of an autoimmune in a way. So treating it with an autoimmune protocol is the way to go as well, but we didn't really have a way of repairing the myelin sheath, which is what causes the degeneration over time of that condition. So recent stuff we had found out about a year ago, some doctor came to me and said they had found a research article that 10 hertz is the frequency that repairs the myelin sheath. We have a lot of different frequencies to repair different tissue types. 7 is bone, 13 and a half is muscle, 9.5 is tendons and ligaments, but we didn't have one for the myelin sheath. Well, with 10 hertz, we have the 7 to 12 hertz program that runs through that 10 hertz. So we've been able to start working to actually reverse some of the damage done there.
Interesting. Okay. Um, does microcurrent help with regenerating neuropathy in legs?
Okay, so neuropathy is a tricky beast. Yes, it can help. There's a bunch of different factors that are going to go into the level of success you get. First off, if you smoke, it's probably not going to help because when you smoke, the chemicals essentially just burn up the nerves. I once spent 6 months working with a guy who was getting results and then working remotely, right? So I had never met him in person. He was getting results and then he was going back and he was getting results and going back. And then I found out he smoked a pack of cigarettes a day. And we could have saved both of ourselves a lot of time if we knew that. Diabetic neuropathy. So diabetic neuropathy is surprisingly easier to resolve than regular neuropathy because with diabetic neuropathy, we can actually work with the diabetes protocol to help improve the functionality of the body, and then the neuropathy can start to resolve itself. Early stage neuropathy, if you've got the numbness, but not so much of the burning pain, and it's only in a few parts of your body, that's easier to deal with too, because you can improve circulation. The more blood flow that gets in there, the more the nerves continue to fire and work. So that's easy too. When you get to neuropathy where it's in both legs and it's like from the bottom of your feet up to your knee, a mixture of burning pain and numbness, that's when it gets extremely tricky. And to be able to resolve that with this level of device would be very hard. That's not to say it's not possible, but typically people with extreme neuropathy are going to need our top of the line device. The reason is that nerves regenerate at 2 hertz. 2 hertz does not exist in this device. It does not exist in our mid-tier device. It only is existing in our top of the line. So there are things you can do. You can work towards improving circulation, and you can likely get some relief. But to fully resolve full-on neuropathy like that, you would need a higher level machine than what we're talking about today. Now, there's always the option to upgrade. And there's always the option to try low. Like when anyone try the lower tier and move up, when anyone decides at any point down the line, if you bought this today and in 2 years' time you were like, you know what, I really want to take this to the top level or the mid level, you can trade it in for the difference in price between the two. There's no limit to that. You just pay the difference. We send you a new device. So this allows people to step in at the lower level and work their way up. But most people will find that they're going to get those results there. But neuropathy is tricky because once those nerves die, we have to then resuscitate them back to life, right? So that's the challenge.
Okay, thank you. Someone else said, what about tooth implants? I don't know exactly what the question means, but
So yeah, I'm not 100% sure either, but I mean, if they're talking about like having like a new tooth put in, like a fake tooth put in or something, and they've drilled into the bone, there will be scar tissue there you're going to want to treat, especially because once we delve into the oral health lab, we'll be seeing that every one of your teeth actually functions as a fuse for a meridian point, and that's rooted in the root of the tooth. So when you scar that by having some extreme dental work or a root canal done, you can actually impact everything from the ovaries, uterus, lungs, just by causing a small amount of scarring on that area that needs to be addressed. So there's a lot that you can do there.
wow. Okay, thank you. Another question, and maybe you don't know the answer to this one, how does your algorithm different from Carol McMakin's
Mhm.
frequency specific microcurrent algorithms? I'm
Yeah,
aware that
so
she
Car
manually changed it for patients, but she provides algorithms now.
Yeah, so Carol McMakin, she's the freak. So there's two different types of microcurrent to me. Frequency specific microcurrent was where she found her kind of foundation, and frequency specific microcurrent was originally the idea, and to a large degree it still is, of I'm going to do 7 hertz and then dial this one to 100 and then dial this down to 10. So it was a lot of manual work. And typically, the way we saw FSM going was if you were an extremely skilled practitioner, you got amazing results. Or if you worked with an extremely skilled practitioner. When you tried to do it yourself, you didn't know what you were doing and you struggled. Now, yes, some of her devices nowadays do have algorithms in them. Where does this differ from ours? Well, the algorithmic microcurrent again is the computer in the device changing the frequencies for you. What her devices do lack is voltage. Now, our devices are fairly unique. There are another couple of machines out there that do similar things in the use of high voltage and the use of waveforms. Now, high voltage sounds scary. It is not scary. All voltage means, if you're an electrician, you know this, all voltage means is push. It's the potential for the energy. So when we have a high voltage sign on a big power box, well, there's a lot of energy in there. When we say high voltage with two AA batteries, there's not a huge amount of danger that can happen there. But voltage allows us to push the current deeper into the body. A lot of treatments with microcurrent therapy, they do low current, low voltage. And this is because they don't understand the need for that voltage. If I have a typical microcurrent device, unless I'm accessing meridian points, all I'm going to be able to do is treat the surface of the skin. Our skin has a natural resistance to electricity. And typically, you'll see that there's a need for sticky pads or gels or water with frequency specific microcurrent to bridge that gap. Ours doesn't need that. As Jane can attest to, you just put the probe on and you feel it. And that's what the high voltage does. It bypasses that system, but it also gets deeper. It means that if I'm treating the surface of my liver, the current is actually also hitting my liver. So I'm able to push it in and push it deeper. The other is waveform. Now, some of the big FSM microcurrent devices allow you to choose your waveform. A lot of the portable ones don't. Now, there's no real reason you'd ever want to choose any waveform but the body's most natural waveform. Most electrical devices work on what we call a square wave, and I'm going to start drawing. Kind of looks like a castle rampart there. That is a square wave. That is extremely unnatural, but extremely easy to program. When you program a straight line and you say go up X weight, X height, then turn, and then go down, drawing straight lines is easy. If you've ever tried to draw a circle and make a perfect circle, you know how annoying it can be. So without some assistance, other devices will use sawtooth waves. And they kind of look like this. What does the body run on? The body runs on sine waves. Nice natural hills. You see that when you're looking at like a heart monitor and stuff, it'll be bloop, 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 right? It's very, very nice. Our devices work on these same waves. We call them biphasic sine waves. This is two sine waves operating at the same time, overlapping like this. This means that when we use our devices, not only do we get deeper in the body, but these overlapping sine waves, your body immediately looks at those and then it says, hey, I asked for something, and it gets on with it. This is kind of like an invader. It's like, what is this? And the only real way to describe it is that waveforms are like the language we're using. If I was sitting here having doing this presentation in Portuguese, 90% of you aren't going to understand what I'm saying. But by doing it in English, we can communicate because we understand that language. Square waves would be like trying to speak Portuguese to an English person. You're going to miss a lot. We're speaking English to an English person or French to a French body, English to an English body, and making sure that it understands. So there's quite a lot of differences between them, but they often go unseen simply because I always worry they're going to overwhelm people when they see them. So hopefully that answers your question and didn't just confuse you more.
I'm going to ask you to speed up a little bit now because we still have a lot of questions to get through. Does
Okay.
microcurrent help depression?
Yes, so it can to a degree. So in the neurofeedback world, we can look at using the alpha frequencies in the device to assist with depression by calming the nervous system in the body. And vagus nerve can also help with that too.
Okay, perfect. Let's see. Next one is if you turn off inflammation, is there any risk that the body then won't respond when appropriate inflammation is needed?
No, not really any risk in that. No, I've never seen that happen. Inflammation is kind of a default functionality of the body. So we want to train the body to stop inappropriately releasing inflammation. But no one that's been doing vagus nerve for 5 years ever then gets a lung infection and doesn't get that inflammation. It does happen.
Okay, perfect. All right. Does it help with osteoporosis and arthritis?
Yes, it does. I saw the question under that, and I'm like, oh, Rob, I messed that one up. Um, so arthritis is an inflammatory condition. So yes, absolutely, it helps with that. Osteoporosis is essentially the breakdown of the bones themselves, and so the regenerative frequency for bone is 7 hertz. So as long as there's no inflammation present, you can begin to regenerate that tissue as well.
Hmm. I'm learning a lot today too. Okay. Yeah. So the expiration date, if there was an error in that date for 2020, and obviously it was just a little typo, and Rob will get that fixed, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Is it good for bunions?
Yeah, so we do have a bunion protocol. I will say I've not really worked on any myself, but I've had clients report some success with it. It's a fairly straightforward protocol. And yeah, I'll just say about that expiration because I won't be able to correct it because it's in the video. So the
Oh,
expiration date is 2025. I apologize for that. I'm still stuck in 2024. I don't know where that year went.
okay. And it was it January 8th? No, you said I think you said the 16th, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's the 16th of January 2025 is when the offer goes.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Who cannot and should not use it? Like if have heart SVT issues, is it a problem?
So The who should not use it list is pretty minimal. We don't recommend women in the first or second trimester of pregnancy use the devices. Nothing's ever happened, but it's just as a precaution. We don't recommend the direct treatment with microcurrent of a known cancerous tumor. So if you have a brain tumor, don't put the device on the tumor directly and hold it in place. You can still do the vagus nerve and do other things, but we just don't want to encourage more circulation to the area of a tumor. Other than that, there's not really many issues, even with the heart and things that can cause problems using this. If you have a pacemaker, don't treat directly over the pacemaker. But for the most part, these are microcurrents, right? You already have them in your body. If the microcurrent device is going to affect your body negatively, it's the same way your body would have affected it negatively with those frequencies.
Okay. I think we've addressed that next one. And then you just went over the contraindications. So I think we've covered that. What's the life expectancy of the machine? Any maintenance costs? I can run it without the annual membership in the future, correct? Correct.
Correct. Yeah. So what is the life expectancy of the machine? I've had people that have had some of our older machines. They're all made on the same technology for 10 plus years, and which has been really as long as they've existed, and not had any problems with them whatsoever. They are built to last. They're American made. We don't build them in China, so they're not cheap. So they have high quality costs to them. There is so you get a 3-year warranty with no maintenance costs at all, serviced in Texas. And essentially, after that, if there is a problem, it doesn't mean you're doomed. You do get to send it in. They have a flat repair fee of $195. So let's say 5 years down the line, something goes horribly wrong with your machine, you could send it in and get it repaired for $195. They're extremely generous with their service. I've had a lady drop one in a toilet before. I've had a lady drop one in a cup of coffee before, and they've replaced it for that 195. So the goal is to help people. Yes, you can run it without the annual membership. The membership is just the one-on-one support, really. You'll get your manual. You're going to have access to all of the free videos we have. Like you're going to get a lot of support anyway outside of that, and the Facebook group and so on. So.
And I'll just add too that the batteries, like it hardly draws any power. The batteries last forever.
Hmm.
Well,
Yeah,
not quite forever. That's
sometimes I'll find like 2 months before I have to replace my batteries. Like it's a
yeah,
very low draw on the batteries.
yeah. Okay, the next one. What sort of progress can be booked with dental issues or implants?
So, dental stuff, and I cover this a lot in the lab when we do this, dental stuff does take longer to progress than anything else we see. So while you might get some results within a week with your chronic pain, if you have a cavitation, for example, that could take quite some time to resolve. Like I had someone working on one for 4 months, but they did resolve it. Deep dental infections and things like that. The dental world of microcurrent is fairly new. And so there's quite a bit to work on with that. But yes, it takes longer than most to get the results. But even with like chronic issues, I've had people get extreme success.
Okay, wonderful. Someone else said I have chronic Lyme disease, which has affected my nervous system and brain, and tinnitus and hearing loss, regular vertigo, and migraine. A microcurrent help with these. And well, you already said you do ship to the UK, so we know that answer.
Yeah, so yeah, chronic Lyme disease, this can obviously be very challenging for people, and a lot of it is the brain fog that comes with it. There is an inflammatory component to this, so there is inflammation in the brain and in the body in general, which just makes you extremely tired. Things like tinnitus and hearing loss, I actually have to address those separately. So we would treat Lyme like an autoimmune, and the vagus nerve and working on the brain to deal with the Lyme. For tinnitus, we actually struggle a lot to get results with tinnitus. We have like a 10-step protocol, 50% chance it's going to work, 50% chance it's not. And I don't understand. It's got to be due to the cause. Something is missing in that process. I have some clients are like, yeah, it cured my tinnitus, and others are like, it did nothing. And that makes it challenging to go from there. Hearing loss. This is going to be based on the reason for the hearing loss again. If it's your brain, then yes. If it's the hairs in your ear dying, we don't have a way of regenerating those. And then regular vertigo and migraines, yes, we have solid protocols for those. The tongue stimulator protocol, which uses this tool here. This actually uses the nerves in your tongue to connect to your brain and to reset the cranial nerves in the brain. That helps amazingly with vertigo, with long COVID, and then vagus nerve is awesome for migraines. So yes, it can help with most of them, barring tinnitus. And I'll just take this opportunity to say with the shipping that it is free shipping worldwide. For those of you so whoever goes to the store will notice the price might change. This is because it changes to your local currency. So if you're in Canada and you head to the link, it's going to show you the price in Canadian dollars, but it's based on that price of USD. It'll be the same in England. It'll show you it in pounds. Um, in Europe and Australia, there is a possibility you will be charged customs duties, but I want to take the opportunity to say that we put a lower value on the package. So we'll put the value of $300 Canadian on there. So you'd be paying your VAT on that, not on what you're actually paying. This is in part to speed up the process, but that's just, it also helps you guys with the cost. But so don't be alarmed if you get your package and it says on the package, $300. You didn't get the wrong device.
Okay. I'm not really, can you see that question? I don't really understand it about electron pair.
I don't really understand it.
Yeah.
No, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move on. Can this be used for someone who's had a stroke with small problems, like can speak with a slight slur and can walk, but after stroke tends to argue much more than he ever did?
Yeah, so that set shows that there was that little bit of a brain change. I won't say brain damage because that's a strong word. So yeah, two-pronged approach to strokes, tongue stimulation and vagus nerve. The University of Texas did a bunch of experiments on stroke recovery with vagus nerve. Extremely good results. We see the same thing, but to rewire and correct the brain, the tongue stimulation is a really good choice as well.
Okay, next one. I thought that inflammation is a side effect of the immune system at work trying to heal a cut or and so on, i.e., that inflammation is not the problem or cause of disease. I thought the cause of chronic inflammation was leaky gut, which puts the immune system in a constant state of activation. And
Sure,
this,
yeah. So yeah, no, the inflammation is a side effect of the immune system at work, and it's also, and I mentioned that earlier on in the presentation, and maybe you weren't here for that, but acute inflammation is completely different than what we're talking about today. We're talking about the chronic inflammation here, which is the major issue. Now, leaky gut is one of many factors that can contribute to chronic inflammation. But it's the same thing with mold exposure, right? Electromagnetic fields, right? If you're sensitive to those, so many things can cause chronic inflammation. And so, but the chronic inflammation itself is what then breeds and creates that disease. If you take the leaky gut as an example, it is maybe what came first, the chicken or the egg, but it's going to create that inflammation. And from that inflammation, these other conditions happen. So you want to try and correct things like leaky gut, mold exposure. We have protocols for those too. But on a base level of what created the four autoimmune diseases you're suffering from, it's that inflammation itself that is causing all the damage. And if we remove that, we're able to get to the root of dealing with a lot of these problems.
makes sense. Okay, next question. My wife and I both need your device program. Does this require two memberships?
No, one device, one membership. You can utilize it across the board. The tongue stimulation, I mean, I assume you guys already share saliva from time to time anyway, but you clean these with rubbing alcohol. You can clean any of the attachments with rubbing alcohol. And yeah, you just need the one device and the one membership. It covers all family members, really. Just if you're getting into the point where you're sharing this with like extended family, the tongue stimulator specifically, you should probably buy a few of them um, just just to be sure.
Okay. I don't understand the next question.
Oh, I do.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so what is the milligauss with the Avasia Life Genesis working at? It will measure in at like half a milligauss or 1 milligauss. It is extremely low energy output in the danger zone. Like you're not even close to the danger zone with that. Um, so it's not like a PEMF where it can get to that higher point.
Okay. Does it reduce gum pockets and gum recession? I think you mentioned that during the
Yeah, we're going to cover that in the dental lab. We don't, so the reason we're doing these labs is essentially we put a call out to people and said, hey, what big, massive holes do we have in our training? And people came in with some big topics. Cancer is going to be one later in the year, dental labs. There's things we can do with them, but we just don't have the full amount of training on there. Gum recession, gum pocket issues will be covered in the dental lab.
Okay. And that's in February, I think you said, right?
Yeah, it's February 26th. So you got plenty of time to just like set aside a few hours if you want to go live. And of course, you get the replay if you can't attend it live too.
Right. How does it work with implanted devices such as a bladder neuromodulator?
So just try not. So most of the time, these things are extremely well protected and insulated from exterior forces because they don't. It's like old pacemakers were terrible because you could walk in front of a magnet and just drop dead, right? Now they protect them against all of these things. So there's very little chance that it would impact it negatively. Just I would avoid treating directly over that area. That's the general recommendation. The FDA would say no because safety wise, they always go over the top with these things. But again, it's body friendly electricity. If your body's own cells have not triggered an issue with it, the microcurrent device shouldn't.
Okay. And can it resolve bone spurs in the cervical spine?
Bone spurs are tricky, and if they're in your spine, you're gonna have to have someone do the treatment for you. We actually get great results with them, but it's a very uncomfortable treatment because you have to break up the spur. So we t essentially take the pencil probe and you crank the power up so it's a little stings a little bit, and you put pressure in the center of the bone spur and you kind of move the probe and it will break up the bone spur. We've broken up some pretty big ones before. I've had even someone on Facebook the other day commented about how they got rid of a really nasty bone spur. They were super surprised. But you obviously would not be able to do it on your own very easily at all. So you'd want someone to be able to hold it for you.
Mm-hmm. Um, also work with cysts like that as well?
Cysts are tricky. So no, I have some issues with some cysts in my arm. And though I've had some clients say, "Oh, I got rid of my cysts," I personally have not. So I t tend to tell people I don't think it really gets rid of the cysts in the same way.
Okay. Can it help spinal stenosis or disc regeneration? And well, you already talked about neuropathy, but
Yeah, I already talked about neuropathy. The other two, yes, it can help with spinal stenosis and disc degeneration is pretty easy to do. Like again, this is a 7 hertz frequency and a repair of that from that process.
amazing. Can it regenerate hair follicles for alopecia?
It's funny, I always say to my team, I'm like, there's two questions that come up on every webinar that I always have to answer with, and I'm not sure, and that's tinnitus and hair regrowth. Now, there's a hair regeneration protocol. It's a 50-50 thing. Like it may work, it may not. So I wouldn't buy the device specifically for that, but if you're getting it for something else, then absolutely try it. There's no harm in trying it. It's going to depend on why is the hair loss. Like, yes, it's alopecia, but is it scar tissue that's preventing the hair follicles from growing back? Is it a lack of circulation or is it something else entirely? Like, it's so hard to know.
Yeah, if it was stress, that might be a different issue, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Okay. Would this help with heavy metals and yeast detox?
So, this is tricky as well because the detox of the body, like we can't destroy pathogens in the body. So like an over growth of yeast is not going to get destroyed with microcurrent. It's the same with parasites and things like that. We have an elimination assistance protocol that can help your body process these things naturally. So it can provide assistance, but it won't necessarily be a supplement, a replacement for like a supplement regimen that might work on detoxing yeast or something else that might help with heavy metals. So it should be done in conjunction with these things.
Okay. Someone else asked, I currently have shingles. Will this current help heal the nerve endings and sheaths?
Yeah, so shingles, it can be so painful. Yeah, so we have a shingles protocol. Typically, right, shingles pop up when your immune system drops low. And so you would want to treat the area where the shingle outbreaks are and essentially you should be able to push them back. It's very simple. A lot of results from that have been really good. Just if you share the device, make sure you clean the electrodes thoroughly afterwards because shingles can transfer, right? Most of the electrodes are medical grade stainless steel, so they clean really, really easily. But you don't want to be treating yourself on your shingles and then treat like, your kid or your grandkid and give them chicken pox without thinking that through. So just make sure that you do clean it between.
Right. Okay. I have recently heard the Nikola Tesla long ago invented some type of health ray. Perhaps what I see in Googling that there's a Tesla machine. Do you know anything about his, and is his research a long ago precursor to microcurrent therapy?
Tesla actually is a fascinating individual because his devices, his creations are kind of what we now use in our own company as scalar energy, which is an additional attachment that could convert the microcurrent into a scalar energy or a Tesla wave. And scalar energy is kind of the one way we treat cancer and really chronic conditions because it essentially uses low level energy to reset the body and the cells and reverse the damage that's done. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily a precursor to microcurrent, though everything he did contribute to energy medicine. But scalar, as we use it, is a huge, huge boon for the natural medicine world. And I think we'll continue to be looking at his foundation as part of what we do for eons to come, honestly.
Maybe I can get you back one day to talk about scalar energy because it's
Yeah,
fascinating.
it is fascinating. I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Okay. How do we notice that mitochondria is improving?
So mitochondria improvement will typically be seen in the form of more energy. People that have poor mitochondria are going to feel really tired and sluggish easily, and you'll start to see that improvement that way.
Mhm. I think you answered this one about clinical trials for microcurrent therapy or even any of the other modalities like PEMF or red light therapy. There's lots.
Yeah, there's a lot of research. Clinical trials are a little bit more intense. We've actually put all of our clinical trial efforts into wound healing. And it's taken us years to get the wound healing clearance. We had Stanford University did a clinical trial. Baylor School of Medicine did the same trial on wound healing, and that's what allowed us to secure our wound healing clearance in the States, which has allowed us to get into the Veterans Affairs hospitals there as well. Now, PEMF probably has quite a bit more clinical trials because it's been around like and more commonly accepted for a longer period of time. But yeah, so you can find the clinical trials. But when people ask me, like, where are your clinical trials on vagus nerve stimulation? Well, we haven't done them. We've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and all the years on getting into the wound healing space so far. We're going to turn our attention to something else now.
Hmm. Okay, we answered hair growth. I have a vagus nerve stimulator, but it can only fit on the ear tragus. Your device can be put on different parts of the body with different frequencies. What's the difference?
So vagus nerve stimulation through the ear is this thing. I did my dissertation on the vagus nerve. So you got to remember I had to write like 200 pages and do all the research on vagus nerve. And so like this idea that we can access the vagus nerve super effectively through the ear is really weird. The only way that we're going to be able to do that without using extremely high voltage is to actually stick the probe in your ear to actually touch that, because otherwise you're not going to get through it. So what you're actually getting is you're getting a stimulation of the ear acupuncture points in the ear, and this is going to have an effect on your body. But with the vagus nerve, the vagus nerve runs right across the surface of the skin on the neck. So you can place this probe anywhere. To actually access the ear vagus nerve, and I've tried it with patients that are sensitive to microcurrent, we don't get any results with it at all. But you can feel it in your guts as the current is going up and down your vagus nerve when you do it on the neck. Like you're gonna
I've
feel it
noticed.
transferring through your body. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
right down my arm, right down to you can feel the places that are tight.
Yeah.
Um, okay, can Hashimoto's be fixed?
Yeah, so Hashimoto's is the autoimmune disease of the thyroid, right? And it can be corrected, but there is a caveat to that is that we never treat the thyroid directly. And you'll find this in all of our protocols. The thyroid is a super temperamental gland, and the best way to treat it is to avoid it and treat around it and do the vagus nerve. So we do have a full protocol for it, but it won't involve sticking the device on your thyroid. So if you go with the device, don't open it out of the box and excitedly stick it on your thyroid.
Hmm. Okay, and then there's a question about can it be used for treating a person with prostate cancer?
Yeah, so we have a cancer protocol, but it's like cancer support, and so it typically will involve things like vagus nerve, mitochondrial recharge. We avoid treating any known tumors directly, and we have it's quite an extensive protocol video on that actually.
Okay. And might be worthwhile asking, going to the February event as well.
Mm.
Uh, and I think, yeah, is it contraindicated for cancer? I think you addressed that earlier as well.
Yeah, it's only for active tumors, but it can actually help with cancer if you just follow the protocols and don't go right on those tumors aggressively.
Okay. A couple of questions about do we get a discount to upgrade with the first purchase? So I guess the question is, can they upgrade right away?
Right away, like right now.
Yeah.
What we often do for people is if they're looking at getting a different device on one of these webinars and they reach out to support, we can give them the same bonuses that are
Okay.
normally only exclusively available with this, with the next device up or the final device. So if that's something that they want to do, I just encourage people though that like this device may seem pretty basic with its four programs, but it can do a lot. This is why we created this one, was to give vagus nerve to everyone instead
Mhm.
of only to people with big bank accounts.
Right. Maybe you could answer this next question. Can I pay in Europe via the ideal method? I don't know what that is, but
I think
maybe.
it's a payment provider. I don't recall if it is an option on our website. If it's not, it's just because we don't have an account. We might not be able to have an account because we're a Canadian company.
Mhm.
So if it's not on there, unfortunately, no, we do have credit card. All the credit cards are accepted, and PayPal are the two primary ones we see on there.
I probably got time for just a couple of more questions because I have another commitment, and I think you've been going for almost 2 hours now. So we'll just see if we can answer a couple more. But there's a bunch of questions in the chat, I know, and we haven't got to all the questions. So how would people get the rest of the questions answered?
Uh, so if there are any other questions, like definitely there's the toll-free number on the website. If
Yep.
you call it, you're probably going to get the voicemail. This is just because it's always ringing. But we do get back to everyone. One of our support team members will call you. It might even be me, depending on how busy we get. And we can answer your questions on there as well. And you can also email us through the website and we will get back to all of the inquiries. There's a live chat button on the bottom right. Sometimes it's on with a live agent. Other times it's leave a message. But again, we get back to every single one of them on there as well.
Okay, so we got time for maybe one more question. I just put the link in the chat there again for everyone as well. Do US insurance companies cover the cost of these devices?
So that is a tricky question sometimes, but you need a doctor's prescription and it needs to very specifically say the name of the device and it will never be a full amount. The most I've ever had is a Canadian insurance company paid about $800. And it was like a medical, like a Pacific Blue Cross, but for the hospital. And it did it with a doctor's prescription. So you would need a prescription for them to consider it because otherwise they're just going to try and find someone in network. And we are not allowed to be in US network because we're a Canadian company.
Okay.
Um, and I'm just going to jump back and just answer that question from before about Ideal because I just had a thought. If they don't have a credit card or PayPal, we do accept bank wires too. You just have to talk to the support team. So that's the only option that's really going to work. And if the Ideal isn't on there, but just email us and we can send you the details. And that's a pretty effective way of getting it done too.
Oh, that's great. There was a question there about macular degeneration and glaucoma, so eye issues.
Yeah, so we actually, one of the things people tend to find us for more than anything else is eye issues. Like microcurrent for eyes is an option that it really just addresses issues that many times have no other answer. And it's all about increasing that circulation to the eyes. Now, we actually do have for dry macular degeneration and glaucoma, we have protocols for wet macula. You need to do some supplements as well before you start treatment because wet macula involves active bleeds, and you don't want to increase blood flow to an area that's bleeding. So you
Right.
need to strengthen the blood vessels. Typically, you can use the attachments in the kit and place them on the eyes with the eye closed. But we do sell a special set of goggles, which kind of look very scientific, that go over both your eyes. They treat all around your eyes. They treat the eye themselves. They're an extremely popular accessory for anyone looking to treat eye disease.
All right. Well, I think we have ran out of time. So I just want to say thank you so much, Dr. Rob, for being here. A very informative presentation, a lot of hope there for people. It's such a great opportunity to be able to treat yourselves at home and have this available. So I just want to say thank you so much for being here. Remember, people, to reach out if you didn't get your question answered. Go to the website and get in touch. And again, thank you so much for this, Rob, and the great work you're doing in the world. And thank you so much to everyone for being here.
Yes, I'm really, really thrilled with all the questions. It was awesome. It was my favorite part is answering all the questions. So thank you for having me on here, and hopefully we'll be able to help a lot of people.
All right. Me too. I hope that too. Okay. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.